The countdown had 11 seconds left when Yara stopped breathing. 340-fold space signatures bled into existence across the Vera corridor, hegemony grade, arranged in rows too clean to be anything but drilled. 42 human ships sat opposite them, not moving, not yet. Fleet Lord Karath watched the gap close from his flagship and felt nothing sharper than mild interest. He had won this kind of arithmetic before. 42 against 340 wasn't a battle, it was a formality with weapons attached. He opened a channel on every frequency the humans could hear. You are outnumbered 8-1. Your longest guns can't reach our rear line before our front line ends you. A pause, calculated for effect. Surrender now and your people live. Resist and there's nothing left to take. 10 minutes. The channel died. On the Resolute's bridge, nobody spoke. Commander Briggs stood with his arms folded, staring at the deck like it owed him an answer. Captain Doran Voss wasn't looking at the enemy fleet at all. He was watching a small timer on his personal console, one he'd started 48 hours earlier, the moment the first faint approach signatures had registered at the edge of human space. He hadn't told anyone. There'd been nothing for them to do with it until now. When Karath's voice returned, amused, needling, Voss let him finish his second recitation of tonnage and reload times before answering with two words that weren't his own, Karath's words, handed back. Surrender now. The silence that followed ran 4 full seconds. On the Hegemony Bridge, Sub-Commander Vereth didn't laugh with the others. He'd spent years reading human history that wasn't in the threat files, and those two words sat wrong in his chest in a way he couldn't yet name. He went back to his sensors, running a deep sweep on the asteroid belt lining the corridor's north wall. The returns were too quiet. No thermal scatter, no debris noise, nothing an asteroid field should have. Voss, unbothered, asked to talk about a probe. 52 years old, the size of a refrigerator, hegemony markings on the shell, found drifting at the edge of human-mapped space. The hegemony had logged it as routine and forgotten it within a year. We found it, Voss said, and didn't forget anything. 52 years, Fleet Lord, every year of it. Karath dismissed the data as obsolete. Voss agreed the fleet was new, but the probes hadn't stopped at one. Small, slow, logged by hegemony arrays as static, each one adding to a picture humanity had been assembling for decades. We've known you were building this fleet for 6 years. We've known your departure date for 4 months. On the Hegemony Bridge, the officers went still. Karath's voice thinned. 30 years of monitored border conflicts, he said reactive command, poor coordination, a species that broke under pressure. That was the model his council had trusted. We showed you what was useful for you to believe, Voss said. Not all of it was invented. The Haro line was real pain, but enough of it was theater. We needed you wrong in the right ways. Vereth's second sweep came back the same as the first, nothing, where there should have been something. He switched to a resonance pass built to catch cold structures hiding under minimal power. Voss's timer hit 0. Nothing was pressed. 2 seconds later, the corridor came apart at the seams. Cloaking fields along the belt, and both corridor walls failed in sequence, one after another like doors thrown open down a hallway. 180 mining platforms, repurposed over 4 years, logged the whole time as civilian infrastructure, now bristling with mass drivers and plasma emitters, every one of them aimed inward. Beyond them, 220 warships decloaked without a flicker of warning, a full year of running dark behind them. And at every fold space exit in the corridor, inhibitor boys woke up and sealed the only doors out. Vereth turned his display toward Karath without a word. They were already here when we arrived. Karath's answer was the only 130 years of command had taught him. He ordered the front line to fire. The 42 took the volley and held. 1 frigate lost power and drifted. 3 others took shield damage that would have broken lesser formations. None scattered. They'd known before they launched that they were bait, a number small enough to invite the first strike, while the real weight of the fleet sat cloaked and waiting. They returned fire from a target list built weeks in advance, and the platforms opened up in perfect synchrony, 3 simultaneous impacts landing on the same coordinate on hegemony, hulls half a second apart. Shields built for one angle of attack, folded under 3. A heavy cruiser lost its entire port flank in a single exchange. Admiral Dale's reserve swept around the belt and hit the rear while the front was still absorbing the platforms. Pressure from 2 directions at once. No clustering, no easy targets. A dreadnought went dark. Karath tried to run. 30 ships toward the weakest reading on the inhibitor grid, full burn. Voss watched them go and didn't move to close the gap. "Those aren't weak points," he said quietly. "They're bait too." Swarm drones the size of fists came out of the belt debris, invisible on active scan, each cluster locked to a single ship's shield rotation, waiting for the half-second gap between cycles. The lead destroyer took 11 hits in 40 seconds and drifted engine dead into the ship behind it. What followed wasn't a battle anymore. It was arithmetic, running the other way now. 30 ships became 22. 22 stopped moving. Verith stepped close enough that only Karath would hear him. "We read their wars," he said. "We never asked what they did between them." He didn't wait for a response. They saw something small cross their border 50 years ago and quietly decided that if this day ever came, they'd be ready. That's not reaction. We don't have a word big enough for what that is. The corridor went still. 147 hegemony ships destroyed or dead in space. 68 more crippled. The rest surrounded, engines cold, nowhere to run. Karath's own flagship sat at 40% main cannon and no working shields. He opened the channel one last time. "You had this capability for years," he said. "You could have hit our shipyards before this fleet ever left dock. Why wait?" "Because you hadn't attacked us yet." The words landed on the hegemony bridge like a weight dropped from height. Karath had braced for a tactical answer, readiness windows, strategic patience. Instead, he'd gotten a line, drawn 52 years ago, and never once crossed, not even with the door standing open the entire time. "Send your terms," he said. 3 lines arrived in plain text. Full hegemony withdrawal from contested space, 60 days to clear the boundary. Every human prisoner released, with a full accounting of the dead. And a recorded statement, broadcast on every hegemony frequency, naming the invasion for what it was and whose orders had sent it. Karath read the 3rd line twice. "The Council will disavow this. Call me compromised." "Let them," Voss said. "Record it anyway." Karath stood in front of his own bridge camera, with the emergency lighting flickering behind him, and gave his name, his rank, his fleet designation. He said, without looking away, that the hegemony armada had come to force human submission under threat of annihilation, that the operation had been ordered by the Council, and that it had failed. He spoke for 4 minutes and sent the file without another word. The corridor opened. Dale's ships escorted the wreck of an armada out through the gap in the inhibitor grid, slow enough to let the crippled hulls keep pace. Karath's flagship went last, dark and limping, and cleared the boundary without incident. Briggs found Voss afterward in the aft observation room, coffee gone cold in his hand, watching the empty corridor through the viewport. "Will they honor it?" "Some of it not because of the threat," Voss set the cup down, "because of the recording." The data reached 14 inhabited systems within 4 days. It played on a public screen in a hegemony transit station for 2 hours before someone pulled it down, long enough for 7,000 people to see Karath's own face, say what his fleet had come to do, and what it had cost him to say it. Analysts across a dozen intelligence services ran the same 11 seconds of bridge footage back and forth. Voss, an instant before the channel opened, before the platforms shed their cloaks, turning to face the enemy fleet with an expression none of them could name. Not fear, not triumph, something quieter, already decided. The ship's log gave them the timestamp they were looking for. 48 hours before the fleet arrived, Voss had known. He'd filed his morning report. He'd walked the ship and said good morning to people by name. He'd slept both nights. In the observation room, the corridor stayed empty and dark, and Voss stood at the glass a while longer before he finally turned away.